Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, good evening. Let us all stand as we begin this session with a word of prayer. We shall repeat the Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. As we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Forever and ever. Amen. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Good evening and a very pleasant welcome to another consultation on electoral reform in the Commonwealth of Dominica. I am pleased to welcome among us this evening the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister, and members of Cabinet who are present this evening, the Parliamentary Representative of the Kalinago Salibe constituency, Honorable Jose Frederick, Honorable Levi Peter, Attorney General, Mr. Lorenzo Sanford, Kalinago Chief, Permanent Secretaries, our observers who are joining us virtually again this evening, Justice Masaga of the Commonwealth Secretariat, Ms. Melin Glean of the OAS, and Mr. Dwight Lay of the OECS who are with us on Zoom. Dr. Kenneth Daru, Special Envoy in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for electoral modernization, other senior government officials, residents of the Kalinago territory joining us in person this evening, the media, all other invited guests, and our listeners via our forms of media and the social media. Everyone. Probably by sheer coincidence, but probably some would say divine providence, that we are in the Kalinago territory this evening, on the day that the Honorable Prime Minister has announced that the Government of Dominica has nominated Mrs. Sylvanie Burton as the first woman I'm going to repeat that, it sounds so good, and the first indigenous candidate for the President of the Commonwealth of Dominica, a nomination that I'm sure we all here in this room feel is well deserved and should be celebrated. So we can applaud that again. This evening we are here in the Kalinago territory at the Salibe Prime. From you, the voters of the Kalinago territory, the Salibe constituency, and surrounding communities on the Sir Dennis Byron report. This reform was presented to the government of Dominica, as you would already know, on June 12, 2023, and was submitted to the public after a review of Dominica's electoral processes. Over the last 2 weeks, we have been conducting these consultations on electoral reform, and more specifically the recommendations from the Sir Dennis Byron report. We have been consulting with various groups around the island. We started with the legal fraternity, political parties, and independent candidates. We met and heard from the churches, the media, non-governmental organizations, and other groups and associations. And at the community level in the second week, we have been to Portsmouth to listen to the people of the north. We have been to Castlebrus to engage those in the east. We have been to Wesley to listen to the voters and the people in the northeast. We have been to Roseau. And Roseau was quite a large group of constituents spanning Salisbury to Scott's Head, and of course all the way to Philip Savan, I would say. We are here this evening, and last night, of course, we were at Marigot for another consultation. We are here this evening in Salibé, and we are here as well because we understand the significance of the views of the indigenous community on the electoral process, and this evening we are looking forward to hearing from you. I know that we are at almost to the end of the third week of our consultations, and many of you have listened to these consultations night after night. So at this point in time, we are probably almost all experts on the electoral process in Dominica right now. You would probably already know that the report was conducted in 2 phases. We had phase 1 of the report, which proposed 2 new pieces of legislation: the Registration of Electors Act and the Registration of Electors Regulations. Phase 2 of the report is concerned with access to the media, campaign financing, and other matters related to the Electoral Commission. And there are 4 pieces of legislation which have been drafted for our review: the House of Assembly Electoral Act, House of Assembly Elections Act, the House of Assembly Elections Regulations, the House of Assembly Election Petition Rules, and the Electoral Commission Bill. These are the 4 pieces of legislation drafted from the phase 2 of the report. The Attorney General, Levi Peter, has been presenting to us over the last few weeks an overview of the Sir Dennis Byron report, and this evening, after he presents this summary, we will open the floor for your comments and questions, feedback, and recommendation. Can everybody hear me? I think my voice is loud enough. On electoral, okay, we are back. Electoral reform in Dominica. So let us welcome at this time the Attorney General as he presents a summary of the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Honorable Prime Minister, Cabinet colleagues, observers, Justice of the Commonwealth Secretariat, Ms. Mellin Flynn of the Organization of American States, Mr. Dwight Lay, Mr. Saz Gunnar, Kalinago Chief, Mr. Lorenzo Stanford, other senior public officials, permanent secretaries, and other government officials, ladies, gentlemen, one and all, good evening. As the chairperson has indicated, I suspect most people have listened to at least one of these presentations, so have heard most of what I will be saying. So I intend to be very brief. As you've heard, and as you would be aware, Sir Dennis Byron was to review Dominica's electoral system and to make recommendations for modernization or reform, whichever term you prefer to use, of our electoral system. His report indicated a number of recommendations. And the phase 1 segment of his report, among the recommendations that I consider perhaps of most significance are his recommendations in respect to identification cards, his recommendations in respect to the issue of residency, his recommendations in respect to the issue of registration, and his recommendation in relation to the issue of confirmation of registration. Taking those one by one. Identification cards. The existing legislation provides for identification cards for the purpose of voting. However, the existing provision is not mandatory. It is a provision which provides that the Chief Elections Officer may determine, in conjunction with the Electoral Commission, that cards should be used. What Sir Dennis recommends is that identification cards should become compulsory for use elections. Perhaps the more significant area of dispute in respect to the issue of identification cards from the consultations is whether those cards should have additional information on them. Some refer to them as biometrics, and in particular, fingerprints. Dispute, and it's an issue that you in the consultation. Other than that, the issue of identification cards is really and not particularly controversial, some might say. The issue of 18 years of age, have to be resident in the particular constituency for your application to be a citizen of a Commonwealth citizen other than Dominican, you would have to be in Dominica for a period of at least 12 months. To come back with any explanation other than to say this. The second area of contention is that which is registered. So a person whose name is actually on the register and who travels outside of Dominica and remains outside of Dominica for a period of 5 years. The current legislation provides that a person who is out of Dominica for a period of 5 years without returning to Dominica is liable to be removed from the register. However, if a person was to come to Dominica for on at least one occasion during that 5-year period, they would be able to remain on the register. Or put it differently, they could not lawfully be removed from the register. So Dennis proposes that that should be changed, and that instead of a single occasion, it should be that a person would have to spend at least 90 days in Dominica during that 5-year period. If the Dominican people believe 90 days is too long, alternatively 50 days should be the period that a person would have to spend in Dominica within that 5-year period. We have some people who believe that that is too long, and indeed some people believe that there should be no restriction, that once a person is registered and on the list, they should remain on the list unless and until they are deceased or if they apply to have their name removed from the list. So that would be one category. The second category would be the category that is recommended by Sir Dennis. A person has spent at least 90 or 50 days in Dominica. And the third category would be that would need to come to Dominica at least once in that 5-year period. Those are three categories that you have different views on, and you will no doubt would wish to express your own view on that. The final matter in respect to the issue of the Phase 1 segment that I suggest is of significance is confirmation on the register. Confirmation is suggested to be a period during which a person whose name is on the register would have to confirm their name and the desire to be on the register so as to remain on the register. And that if they did not do that in the confirmation period, their name would be removed. Obviously, that would be removed, due process having been followed. What Sir Dennis recommends is that within 30 days of the legislation that he proposes being enacted, that's within 30 days of that legislation going to Parliament, being passed, and the President assenting to that legislation, that within 30 days of that, he proposes that the Electoral Commission should declare a period to be known as the confirmation period, and that period should be for a minimum of 6 months or a maximum of 9 months. And during that process, during that period, people would be required to confirm their registration, failing which, as I indicated, their name would be removed from the register. Has a different view, and that view is that there shouldn't be confirmation, but there should be complete re-registration for everybody. That is an area for discussion. You may have your own views, and no doubt if you agree with one or the other, or you have some alternative suggestion, you will make it during the course of the consultation. The phase 2 report, so Dennis recommended various things, but I suggest from observing the report that perhaps the most significant recommendations are his proposal for access to the media. So Dennis recommends that all political parties, Dennis recommends that the commission should be increased in size, I believe to 9 members, that a new piece of legislation to be titled the Electoral Commission Act of 2023 should be enacted, and he recommends under that head that the Electoral Commission should have greater financial autonomy, that is to say, it should have greater responsibility and direct control of finances applicable to its work, and he recommends that a trust fund should be set up for that purpose. He also recommends that the Commission should have greater autonomy over its staffing arrangements and in respect to other arrangements in relation to the Commission. Those are the significant recommendations that are made by Sir Dennis. I would just say, before I leave the podium, that I think, listening to a lot of the discussion that has taken place over the past weeks during the course of this consultation, one of the things that it appears to me that many have forgotten is that the right to vote is a right that has been won with hard sweat, toil, and in many instances, the shedding of blood. It is something that we perhaps have come to a point where we take it for granted that we have the right to vote. And so we've come to a point where now we find it quite easy to seek to remove that right from more and more people in more and more instances. There were times in our history, and not too far back in our history, where you had to own property, or you had to be of a certain social status, or you had to be a man, etc., to be able to vote. Those things have changed. We all have a right to vote, and the condition that the Constitution provides is that you are registered. As far as the Constitution sets out, as Section 33, subsection 2 of the Constitution, once you are registered, you are entitled to vote, unless you are disqualified. And the Constitution provides the 4 grounds upon which you can be disqualified. So I ask that when we make our recommendations, we bear that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, AG, for this very pointed summary. As AG has said, you have been listening for the last few weeks, so I'm pretty sure that you are well aware of some of the issues that have been raised, and you will have already formed your opinions and your views that you would like to share with us this evening. As we have done with our previous consultations, we will open the floor, we'll allow you to raise your hands, and we will identify you. A mic will be taken to you. But before we do so, I just want to recap some of the areas that AG has identified. There are matters related to the identification of voters that you may want to provide feedback on. Also the voters list, confirmation versus re-registration or no action at all, access to the media, whether it be access to state-owned media or access to state and private media. The AG also spoke about residency and the recommendations put forward by Sir Dennis Byron with regard to the 50 or 90 days over a 5 or 10-year period. What are your thoughts on this? And also campaign financing. And there are a number of other issues that have been raised in the report. Before we even proceed further, I would like to welcome the Kalinago Chief, Lorenzo Sanford, to give a few remarks or his comments, and then we will open up the floor for further questions.
Good evening, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, other members of the Cabinet, Parliamentary Representative of the Salibia constituency, Roosevelt Skerrit, Eminent permanent secretaries, members of the Kalinago community and the media. So I would just want to welcome you to the Kalinago space once again. And we gather this evening to engage in a meaningful consultation on electoral reform. So the ideas and the exchange that we are going to have, it's to look at a more inclusive and effective system that truly represents the voice of the people, not only the Kalinago people, but everyone within Dominica itself. So our insights and contributions are very valuable as we embark on this journey of this future to the democratic process of Dominica. So I just want to say thank you all for being here, and let us make this the most of this collaborative effort. On the other note, I would just like to say congratulations to our PS, our very own Sylvanie Burton, for being the first Kalinago indigenous woman to be nominated as the President of Dominica. So thank you for that, Honorable Roosevelt. I do hope that the Kalinago people will see the best that is to come with Miss Burton itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. So can we have a show of hands of those who would like to speak? Our staff will come to you with the microphone. So when you take the microphone, just stand, introduce yourself, and you can go ahead with your comment. Can we check the mic, please? Microphone, please, to ensure that it's on.
I would say thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Prime Minister and our Minister of Cabinet, friends, colleagues of the community. First of all, I want to give my views, but it will be very, very short. I want to be very brief because there are a lot of hot people. I just want to touch on a couple of things. First of all, I want to touch on campaign finances. I believe that every political party who wants to run the country or wants to take part in any political system must in fact finance their own finance. They must stand on their own bottom. Put your hand where above be. Brothers. And secondly, if they cannot get money to finance their party, how can they get finance to run a country? Secondly, I want to touch on cleaning the voters list. I'm not in favor of it, period. The only way that person lives the out of the list itself is by death. And this death person must show a certificate of death. That person is dead. Or else, the name stayed on the list until he or she died. Because I cannot see. I have a son whose studies away for 7 years. And within that 7 years, he have not come down. But he came down on the 10th year. And he cannot cast his vote. He's a Dominican. Yes, that's same birthright. So therefore, if he's not a Dominican anymore, he's not a Kalinago anymore here. So we have to be truthful to all ourselves, sisters, and another thing, to remove these people from the book, we must also work in collaboration with the registrar. So therefore, the registrar will send to the electoral office the names of those who died. Because besides that, there will be a mess. Voter ID, voter ID card. I'm in favor of a card, but I'm in favor of a national card. A national ID card will has everything on it. That card will have the number, your ID, the number of your voting number, because everybody has a number on their ID, and that would be your ID. This would be a multi-purpose card. I don't want a card to fill up my pockets with everything I want to have a card for it. National ID card, I think, is the best way to do it. The radio station, I feel it should be free, which is DBS, national radio station should be free for everyone. But if they want to use the private station, let them put their hand where the mouth be. Pay for it. Sorry. Yeah, this is the time. So, anybody else? I'll wait the floor to open for anyone else to touch something else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your contribution. I see we have a hand up at the back. Can you please stand? The mic will be brought to you.
Good evening, everyone. Protocol has already been established. My stance is no restriction should be placed on the overseas voters. We have voters in the Salibia constituency who visit all the time, build their homes, even have their businesses down here. So it would be very unfair that we are saying to them that they cannot vote. Once your name is on the voters list, I believe that you should be able to cast your votes. The issue of ID cards, I would prefer that a national ID card be done with your voter ID identification, your voter's number, and the polling station that you vote at. That would be better than having a voter ID card only 5 years. What if we lost that card? Who is going to be responsible for replacing that card? I mean, a voter ID, a national ID card would have to be, it could have an expiry date. It could be every 5 years, and then you go back to get it renewed. Because there's a national ID card which people use to travel. So we could use the national ID cards for so many things. And we are saying to the elders that you must have a voter ID card. This is nonsense. I mean, some of the elders, they hardly even have a birth certificate right now. Some of them, the 80-year-olds, some of them who are bedridden. I mean, come on, we are asking for too much. Cleaning of the voters list. I believe that once your name is there, you are entitled to vote. If you are dead, yes. And the electoral division or the electoral office is supposed to work with the registrars in our area to find out who is dead and who is not dead. And then, from there, we remove those names. And I know, especially in my hamlet where I vote in at Kingston, once a person is dead, I know, I scan my voters list and I can say that person was removed. Maybe in past time, if an election is called and somebody was not removed, maybe 2-3 months they died and they wasn't removed, maybe that name might surface. But you don't see dead people voting. So I would like to say, once your name is on the list, you are entitled to place or cast your ballot where you wish, be it by the blue, be it by the red, be it by the pink or the yellow. Where you cast your vote, that is your choice. I believe also, I've been listening to consultations, that the term of office for the Prime Minister, there should be no time limit. Let the electors decide who they want as Prime Minister or leader. This is the electorate's rights and not the rights of others. Let the people speak for themselves. On another note, campaign financing. Bossman, you want to run? Find your money. Simple. Find your money to run your campaign. If one party is favored more than the other and they raise more money, that is, go with it. We're not going to stay here fighting among ourselves and asking ourselves, you know, that one have 10 million and I have only 1 million. No. Get your friends, get your associates, and raise your finances to fund your campaign. Sir Dennis Byron said that, hold on, I'm looking for my notes. The 90-day rule. That 90-day rule. Some people living overseas have only 2 weeks vacation. I can attest to that. My brother was here in July, and he said to his mother, I only have 2 weeks, and I can only spend 1 week with you in Dominica and go back to do something at my home and then go back to work. This is total nonsense. We're asking for people for 90 days. I mean, people, yes, some of us have long vacations. We may have a year down here because we let it accumulate. But overseas, people don't let their vacation accumulate. They take their vacation as is. It's 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks. I mean, yes, some people come maybe every year, every 2 years. But we're asking for a little too much. Because down here, we have a lot of free time, so we can sit down. But over there, we have to make the money to pay for our rent and buy our bread because we get nothing for free on the other side. This is my contribution tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this contribution. Yes, we have a gentleman in green ready. Just go ahead.
Coming on.
Go, it's on, we can hear you.
Testing, 1, 2. Good evening to all, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who doesn't know me, my name is Elvis Francis. Elvis Francis is a former senator with the Dominica Freedom Party. Did not serve too long, but nonetheless, he was able to make a contribution towards the development of his constituency. Before I get into my contribution, I want to say to the Prime Minister and the Commission, thank you very much for answering to our call. In the sense that our Constituency Association did make a request in order to have our consultation to take place here tonight. And we want to say thank you very much, Cassius Daru, along with the others who made such an effort to have our consultation here tonight. So thank you very much for that. Madam Chairman, my concern here tonight is to do with 1, Section 3 and Section 4 of page 4 of the document, as well as page 13 to 16, which says voters identification card. Section 3, equitable use of government media during election campaign. Madam Chairman, I see the media playing a major role during election campaign. And this is one of the medium by which our people, or the people of Dominica, would be glued to during a campaign election. Because they want to hear, we want to listen, we want to know what is happening and what is taking place. And especially with our candidate, with our party, or whoever it is. And therefore, during that political party campaign, we are glued to our media. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I say this in order to say that the state-owned media should have absolutely no problem in accepting the request of any political party or candidate or any political group. And that is in sharing or disseminating information to the public. And this should also be the same with the private-owned medias. So we're not just talking about BS alone, but we're talking about the Kyrie FM, we're talking about the Q95, and all the other radio stations that we have in this country. We believe that our political system should have access to all these mediums and to ensure that they can disseminate the kind of information that they have to. Having said this, it is up to the management of these media houses to specify the rules and regulation by which they should be guided. So somebody cannot just come on DBS radio and start to say this, start to say that, and start to say, okay, no, we have to at least be able to control what we say and how we say it on the social media, on the media. And so, my dear friends, if an airtime is given to you, stick to that time. If you have an issue at hand discussing, stick to the issue that you are discussing. And then it is very important. It is very important as well for the use of the language that is used on the media. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when these people are talking on the media, we have children that is on the edge who are also listening. And therefore, we have to be able to use the kind of language that they can understand as well. Because tomorrow we are preparing for them. We are not just doing it for ourselves. We are preparing for the future of our children. And therefore, the process of electoral reform is just not for now, but it's for the future. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, when we to our media, and especially on election day, many of us sit because sometimes we do not want to go to the area where the ballots are being counted. So we stick to that area, to our media, and we listen to what is happening. We will hear our candidate, okay, I just drawing an example. They will say that the Labour Party candidate for the Salibia constituency, whoever it is, 20 votes. The other one for the whoever party it is, 5 votes. And the other one for the party is 0 votes. So we listen to those things very attentively, brothers and sisters. And therefore it is important that the media plays whatever role it has to play. I firmly recommend that the media houses should have absolutely no biasness to any political party or group as long as you can adhere to the rules and regulation as stipulated by the management of such institutions. Section 4, which deals with the financing of political parties' campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, the objective of anyone, anybody, coming together to form a political party, a political group, is because you have an intention that is maybe greater than what other people are thinking of. And the intention is, I would say, or the objective is that you can take leadership one day to manage the affairs of this nation. And so, brothers and sisters, I believe it is very important that if the political party, a group who decides to do that, should be able to raise its own funds to be able to run its affairs. Then if the objective of your party is to win and manage a country, then you should have money. You should have money, my dear brothers and sisters. Therefore, the first hour of your agenda is that you should be able to demonstrate your leadership qualities. Demonstrate your leadership qualities. Demonstrate your negotiation skills. And show the nation how many friends you have outside there who love you. That means to say, when you can do that, my dear brothers and sisters, then you get money, you'll have money. So, then if you can raise the money to fund your campaign, then you will have followers. You will have followers. And therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, you will remain in power. And you know, that is a very crucial aspect of the campaign. You know, what political parties are looking for is to remain in power as long as we have the resources to be able to remain in power. And therefore, if you cannot raise money, brothers and sisters, it makes absolutely no sense you say you're getting into political business. Therefore, I recommend that every political party should raise their own money with no limitation to the amount that is raised. That is the recommendation. So, my dear brothers and sisters, if you then cannot do it, if you cannot face the roughness, then you should not come into the job. So therefore, stay away from it. You know. So let us just take a look again at page 16, page 3, verse to 16. That says voters identification card. I am in full support of a voter identification card, but just not for election alone. Not for election alone. I mean, yes, talk about social security card, we talk about our passport, we talk about the license, and all these cards, all these IDs that we have. But with this card, this is a card that we can use regionally and internationally. With all, brothers and sisters, all the necessary info incorporated into it to identify the voter. So it's not just a voter ID card. It can be called what we call a national ID card. But it must specify all necessary info incorporated into it so that on election day, when you can identify this person when this person flash his or her card. Cleaning up voters list. This is also a concern for me. Ladies and gentlemen, for the number of years that I have been voting, I have never seen a dead person in a polling station. I have never seen that. So I don't know where that word comes out that they say that, we have dead people voting in the polling stations on the election day. You know, I feel that that is something that we need to be very careful about and how we see that. Maybe I'm not seeing it, but some other people may be seeing dead people walking in on polling station day, but I'm not seeing those things. You know, so my dear friends, brothers and sisters, I believe that the electoral process has in place a structure, and therefore you have the chief elections officer, you have all the polling clerks, all the presiding officers, who would on a quarterly basis or whatever it is come together to do the cleaning of the list. So therefore, I believe that the cleansing of the voters list should be done on a periodic level. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francis, for your contribution.
I can tell you, read the report, quoted the sections and lines. Can we have Mr. Williams, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Parliamentary Representative, Honorable Carib Chief, our observers, Parliamentary Secretary, Permanent Secretary, Ms. Prevo, and Honorable Levi Peter, Attorney General. Good night and welcome to the Kalinago territory. I would like to add my voice to the rest of us and congratulate Mrs. Sylvanie Burton as our nominated person for the position of president in this country. I should also like to thank the administration of Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, who in fact gave her the support to her position. Thank you, Honorable. On the question of electoral reform, I want to say here I have not seen the Dennis Byron report, but I have seen some of the discussions, and I understand what is in fact being discussed. And based on that, conclusion that when Dominica was in negotiations for political independence, and the opposition, constitution. And in the constitution was handed down the position of how will we go about elections in the country, in the constitution. And we accept without no problem. So far, this constitution has served Patrick John, it has served O.J. Serafin, it has served Charles, it has served Edison, and now it is served Skerrit. And we have had so far no problem with the constitution. And I do not understand why is it now that we have to have problem with the constitution about voting, because the constitution worked fine for us all those years. And why do we have to have problem with it right now? So that is one of the concerns. I think the constitution should remain as is, and we should not have to amend the constitution to accommodate no people talking about. I heard some persons talking about once you're Dominican, you have a right to vote. I disagree with that. We Dominicans who stay and take the rain and sun and toil in this country to promote and build our country, at the end of the day, you left Dominica and you went to greener pastures to better yourself and your loved ones. And at the end of the day, you just come down here every 5 years to vote, put us in a situation that we do not like for ourselves, and then we have to stay down here and survive in the condition that you put for us. That doesn't work. I don't think that is fair to us. And I would not like to support and allow, I would go with Sir Dennis Byron report and say you should live here at least 90 days prior to within the 5 years period, and so you could vote in your constituency. On the question of campaign finance, I think I would like to support his suggestion too, with the 5 million figures. That is a fine figure. Election, we do not have money to run the country and to create employment for our citizens in the country, but we have money to spend so much money on election campaign. It's unfortunate that so much money is being spent on election campaign when our citizens in this country cannot find a job and have difficulty in surviving. So I would like to go with Sir Dennis Byron's suggestion and go with the $5 million.
Is that it, Mr. Williams? I saw you looking for... Okay, well, go ahead.
On the question of voter identification card, I think it is necessary for us to have a voter identification card, because if the other identification cards, like Social Security, passport, and driver's license, was in fact capable of doing the job. We could use it all the time, all other times. But I think I would like to support the question of voter identification, specifically for voting. I think that's my point so far. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, you found them. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for your contribution. Okay, I believe we have a hand on this side.
Okay, good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Nice. Let me say, it is said that protocol has already been set, but I like to say it for myself. I want to say special welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit, our own parliamentary representative, Mr. Kozia Frederick, other government officials, and of course, our own nominee. Let's put our hands again together for Miss Sylvanie Burton. Well deserved. Well deserved. Tonight, we are here to discuss something which is very important. And we saw all of these points and everybody raising these points. But before we go into all of these points, there are some things that I want to just talk with you about. Number one, leadership. Leadership is defined as anyone, good leadership or leader, is defined as anyone who uses his influence and charisma over others to achieve specific objectives with a positive skill set that the people we are speaking electoral reform. And electoral reform, what I read, is clearly set to the topic. It is designed to prevent tyranny. Tyranny is, of course, when you have a tyrant, somebody who leads so forcefully that the people he are leading almost have no say. But we do not have tyranny on Dominica. Nobody goes around to your head to vote. Nobody. You look at social media where people are casting all sorts of aspirations, all sorts of posts. Nobody really bothers with that. We have people who are doing proxy representation. We do not talk about that. We have people who are doing walkouts. And this very process that we are looking at tonight should have been completed years back. The very people who proposed it ran away from it. I am saying, so to say, that I'm starting off with the two-term. 2 terms in office is not something that I recommend. And if you look around the mics off, Caribbean, the countries rarely have it. Not many. Probably Guyana. Because in 2000, when Owen, and then we, in the words of Charles, Caribbean, we sometimes run short of leadership. In Dominic, blessed to have a good leader at the helm. We do not want to reform just because some people want to use it as a free pass to getting up the government. Can be used as a free. Let us look at the 2 term. If you're saying a government leadership for 2 terms, and the opposition party alongside him serves for 2 terms, for years. True? 2 plus 2 is 4, right? It is. I mean, we have to be very careful about what we are saying. But apart from that, put that aside. Leadership. You cannot do that. We should not do that. It doesn't work. It's never worked. Be careful about that. This 2-term business. In terms of campaign financing, putting caps on campaign finance, the amount of money you can raise, I do not think it's the ideal thing. Election time is the time when all parties do fundraising. If you look at America, just in one instance, Donald Trump was able to raise $250 million. However, if we are putting caps on campaign financing, we should put recommendations on parties that sit in the parliament for 2 terms, 4 terms, and do not present any finance during the budget. No projects. They are sitting there for 1 to 3, 4 terms, expecting the government to do all of the heavy lifting. All of the heavy lifting. I believe in moving forward, some recommendation must be made that parties that make it to parliament at every budget sitting should come up with a certain amount of tangible. We have $20 million project as a party to show just how much you are worth. I believe that's one thing. I've also said that to cap it is a direct attack on the financial independence of political groups. So we can start off, you undermining. This other effect it will have, and you can continue it, so we're going, you can do acronym, you can do a mnemonic, if you want to call it that, so you, meaning, it will wither W, Treasury, and of course, it will punish it, because we are the ones who will have to pay for it. So you can complete that acronym if you want. As we move on, we have to the voters list. Why, as Mr. Williams doesn't have a problem, it has worked. I believe in confirming. About 3-4 elections of us. So my recommendation is that people who are on the list and who are not dead, according to the definition of Mr. Francis, that you can see them walking into the polling station, we should go ahead with that information and put it in. However, with the ID cards, I do not believe in the biometrics. You know why? For one simple reason. If at some cases, there are instances when people were wrongfully punished. Your biometrics, if it falls in the wrong hand, can put you in the wrong place at the wrong time. You can be convicted for a crime that you did not commit because somebody happened to have the technology that could place you there using your biometrics. I am saying that at the end of the day, we have voted consistently at the polls with the fingerprint taken at the polling station. So it hasn't posed a problem. Then I should pose a problem. No. Let me see if I can do like Mr. Williams, capture my notes, because I seem to have lost them, Charlo. Okay. We move on to the diaspora. In terms of the people who are overseas to vote, sometimes we tend to forget that whenever a Dominican gets overseas, we all of us, and the caption, the headline says, Dominican killed in Antigua. You know what I mean? It's a Dominican killed. You hear sometimes our students are doing exceedingly well and everybody's happy, valedictorian. They are overseas. We have students who go out for 5 years, 4 years to study, 5 years. And because of certain circumstances can only make it back then. Are we saying that these people should be removed from the list? Are we saying that? Really and truly, are we saying that? We are not saying that. It would be folly. It would be a big mistake. We are, by such actions, abandoning our citizens who are out there. Yet, we expect them, should they win 5 years they're out and you didn't hear about them. You might figure things are hard, but let them just win a little lottery and they come back, everybody around them. You know what I mean? Good boy. You know what I mean? We recognize them then. We must recognize the fact that every Dominican is a Dominican by birth, and the right that is reserved to vote for you is your right, and it is a right which should be protected at all times. I'm moving on. Let me see, I don't want to stay too long. What is it that we have here? I have one more thing, the date. The date. We already have a date set. Don't we have a date technically? We have election, and then at the end of a certain period, it must be declared. And it has happened all the time. We have never had a broken engine. So I am saying this to say that while we are hearing electoral reform, most of what is in there, we have pretty much survived these things. We have survived them comfortably. I always tell myself when I go to the election poll, well, the next day after voting, I do not hear people counting how many Haitians or how many people were dead. The count is good ballots, bad ballots. Good ballots, bad ballots. Also, it is said that the two-term, what it does is that the leader looks after his legacy and he gets to like power. However, at the same time, isn't it true to say that if you have an opposition for, let's say, who would have a liking and would want to do such a thing, stay in power forever? However, I do not want to say that we are staying in power forever. I am saying that, let me just sum up by saying that electoral reform, because I realize Kabsek is looking at me in a kind of way. I interpret that very well, Kabsek. I know you want me to finish. You don't have to say anything. I'm good at understanding your body language. So, at the end of the day, I am saying that while we are hearing electoral reform, we should all stand by the things that have worked for us. If it is working, do not unfix it. You are creating problems. I think that's what we should do. And I also think that when you look at Dominica, and you look at the way things are going, you do not want to trade good governance because somebody comes up with that big talk about electoral reform and all of this. So I just want you to exercise caution. Yes, there's most of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this contribution. So far, we are on target with our contributions as it relates to the report. This mic is so to use the podium if you would like to do so, because we have been the audio. We have a hand up at the back. You can come up to this mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Parliament. I'm not saying very nice to have you. It's great having you here in the Kalinago territory. We might be the last place for the last consultation. Let's make it great. Let the people hear our voices and our opinions. Number one, identification cards. I go for a national ID card. A voter's card, you're only going to use it once every 5 years or when election is called. Okay? When you have a national ID card, you can use it anywhere you go. You can use it as a traveling document. You can go maybe use it at the bank. Okay? So why have a card just for election? You're only going to use it for once every 5 years. What happens when you lose it? Who pays for it? Are you going to go back to pay for it, or is it the state going to give you another card? For me, you have a national ID card. Let's go with it. You use it like it's your passport, it's your birth certificate. So that business of having just a card just for voting, for me, it's a waste of time and it's a waste of money for the state of Dominica. Dead voters voting. I laugh. You know why? Because I'm the returning officer for the Salibia constituency. And not for once my presiding officers alert me and say, Mrs. John Lewis, we have a dead person coming to vote. That is just utter rubbish. There is no way a dead person can come to vote. The people who are working at the polling station are people of the constituency. We do not take Marigot people to come to work for the Salibia constituency. We use our own people. We know our people. So that For me, I said it's rubbish. Why are you saying dead people voting? Yes, I can attest there may have some names of people who have passed away. There is a process. Sometimes when these people have passed away, the registering officers would pass on that information to the electoral office. Now, there is a time period that this name will be swiped out. So when the master list comes up, sometimes that name still remains on the list. But the electoral officers know who is dead and who is alive. So I cannot go and look at a list and look for my father who died 20-something years ago, and then my brother is walking up and saying, Martin Ogis. We know Martin Ogis died. So that thing, we need to wipe out that notion. And people of the constituency, you need to educate yourself about those things. Okay? When you hear those things, for me, you swipe it out. Residency and diaspora. My God, 5 years, and you come down here for what, 90 days? That's nonsense. Once you're a Dominican and you're on the voters list, you remain a Dominican. And for me, the only way you are getting off that list is when you are dead. The people out there, they went away, we said, to greener pastures. They contribute, back to Dominica, because when Christmas time, some of us go and collect barrels. Some of us go Western Union and MoneyGram. We get money in our hands. They are contributing to the economy. So when you come and you take away that right, my dear people, we are just slapping our friends in the face. These are Dominicans, and we will vote for them just like that. Let them come and vote. And I know some of us have that issue of how they come and vote and who pay their passage for them. For me, I don't have any issue how they come. My main thing is they have come and they come to vote. Yes, Mr. Williams, I heard you say they come and vote and they leave us in our misery. But not all the time we in our misery. Sometimes we make misery for ourselves. Access to the media. I think all political parties should have access to the media. And I think the media should put their own regulations and their own guidelines whenever it comes to those things. Okay? That hashing of criticizing a politician should never be. Let us stick to the issues. When we are campaigning, we are not campaigning against people. We are campaigning issues. We are talking issues. Let's talk about issues. Not say what Mr. Grano do and what Mr. Frederick do. No. Let us look at how can we improve our community. What is there for us? So we need that. Money. My dear friends, you're a political party. You want to go campaigning. You cannot go and look for the government, tell the government, I want 5 million and you hold 5 million. Get your finance, raise your funds. How are you going to rule a country when you haven't got $1 in your pocket? Huh? How are you going to convince your supporters that we are ready to rule the country? Come on, man. We need to get that out. Registration. And I look at it in a positive and sometimes I look at it in a negative way. There is what you call, let me just say, the last election was called rushed. It was a rushed thing. And some people did not have the opportunity to register, okay? Some people came after the registration date, and some of them, and we need to educate them, they came to my home. I do not register people. The registering of people goes to the registering officers, not me. And it was on the road saying that we did not take their registration because we back in the government. That should not be, okay? You come to register, there is the window open out, we take your registration, Miss Dupini is there, Mr. Ogis is there, we have Mrs. Frederick in Salibe, so we do what we have to do. Last thing, the Sir Byron report. I understand that you all are going all over Dominica. We are educating the people. How many of our Dominicans have seen the report? How many of us have seen a copy? How many of us have said, okay, it might be 10 million pages. How many of us had the time to scan it and say, okay, this is what the report is saying? So, Madam Chair, is there a way that maybe the people could maybe buy the report? Is it online? Is it accessible? Because honest, we need to educate ourselves. We need to read it for ourselves, okay? So people, I want to say it's great having you here. And before I leave, I want to congratulate Mrs. Sylvanie Burton. Let's put our hands together for her, please. Mrs. Burton, you're a very hard-working lady. We have gone years back. We have gone all over. And I tell you today, I salute you, Madam, and Madam President. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Ms. John Lewis. Thank you very much for your contributions. I want to add, though, that the report is available online on the Government of Dominica website. But I do acknowledge that not everybody is able to go online to review the report. Some people have told me that they've gone online, but they have challenges reading it from their phones. So I know some of us still want the traditional paper. It's going to be very difficult to print copies for everybody, but one of the things that we can do is to ensure that the village councils and probably even the election workers, that we have limited copies in the various communities, PM, that people can have access to it. So we will work on that this week. We will take a note of that for our office to have some more copies prepared. But thank you very much for your contribution. And those of you who can access online, the reports are available on the Government of Dominica website. You can always just do a search for Dennis Byron report, and you will get the full report available. It's been there from June of this year. Okay, so we have a hand at the back on the side. Would you like to use this mic? Or okay, you would like a mic to come to him. You can use this mic. This mic is working.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. Good evening to Mr. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit and the other dignitaries, protocol having been established. I think it's a really important juncture at this moment. It's really important that we have this consultation. The reason for it being is that the issues touch and concerns power and the exercise of power in the Commonwealth of Dominica. Touch and concerns power, the exercise of power, and whether or not there can be a restraint on how power is exercised in a very small island developing state. When we inherited the constitution that we have, we imported it wholly from the country that colonized us. Simeon McIntosh, a noted scholar on constitutionalism in the Caribbean, said that it was an elitist exercise, meaning that the person who construct the Constitution in England, the persons who construct the Constitution, were not ordinary citizens like us. They came from a certain class and a certain strata in British society. We imported that Constitution wholly on the birth of our independence in 1978. The power that Constitution gave to elite societies in England is ingrained in the constitution that we imported. That is why reform is required. It is required because that elitist society never genuinely had constraint on how power was exercised in that jurisdiction. So we are at a juncture in our independence project. We got independence in 1978. Comrade Kozia Frederick sat next to me in a class, Caribbean Governance 2. The crux of the matter in that class was about constitutional reforms. All of the reforms that have been recommended by Justice Byron. We spoke about the justification for those reforms and how they can protect our society from arbitrary rule. So it's not personal or directed to the Prime Minister. It's not personal. In our independence experience, we have seen how the exercise of power has resulted in advantages to some, those who can take advantage of the system, and disadvantage to another class of Dominicans. Yet we are supposed to be equal under the Constitution. I firmly agree with the recommendations made with regards to the specific section 3 in phase 2. Honorable AG. Which relates to equal access to the media. This is fundamental. How do we deal with distortions, misinformation? If one party is in dominant control of the media, how are they held accountable, and what type of transparency and democracy are we living in? I firmly support equal access to the media. With regards to political finance, nobody gives money to anyone without strings being attached to these monies. No one in the international community is going to hand to Dominica financial resources without strings attached to. There is reciprocity. What is Dominica giving back? Is Dominica giving back dominant and commanding control to a foreign superpower? And who is that dominant control? Who is that dominant superpower who has intricate control as to whether or not individuals, the young guys on the block, get projects when infrastructure is being embarked upon? We cannot be held to account to foreign superpowers that we don't, we should not be held at the command of foreign superpowers. That is not what independence is. Independence means we define our destiny. I think I've taken sufficient use of the opportunity, Madam Chair, and I would just like to say, in conclusion, that I also support the recommendations for the residency requirement, and I also support term limitations. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Do we have any further contributions? Let me see your hand. Okay, Mr. Yes, come up, please. Sorry. And then we'll take you next. That's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, man, you know that short people are not supposed to be having. We recognize the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, other ministers of government, my own pal rep, past ministers, my friend, Chief, AG, Ashton Grano, Attorney General. I have no paper, eh? You notice that? I don't read from paper. Let me start by looking at, that is not how I should start, but talking about the Constitution, General, Attorney, when the Constitution was handed down, it was not a fait accompli, you know. There was discussion on the Constitution by both parties in Parliament at the time. All right? So recommendations were made on that Constitution that constituted our independence. All right? 77, 78. So bear that in mind, first of all. It was not a Bible handed down to us. It was a document, wherever it was conceived, handed down to us for our consideration, and we made recommendations. And I don't know if you know, but maybe your mother might tell you, there were sleepless nights in the House of Assembly when we were discussing that Constitution that constitutes our independence now. All right? So to say that it was by an elite few or whoever in London and so on, maybe yes, but consider also we took a look at it here and made recommendations and fine-tuned it until it became ours. So please, that notion of people handing down things to you and you agree with it, all right. With regard to voter ID, I'm going to sound a little controversial there. In my view, that business about having a voter ID card or a national identification card is going to cost the state some good money, and every 5 years you're going to have to spend on that. Don't we have ID cards already with all the information about ourselves? Your name, when you were born, the name that you have properly spelled, your date of birth, your address, all this is there. So if the issue is one of a number that is on the electoral list that you do not have on your ID card, then maybe we can find a way, maybe we can put it on the social security card, on the driver's license, on the other one on the passport. Maybe. Just for your consideration. Maybe. Well, why should we have a special ID card or national ID card? And I know some of you want a national ID card. I'm telling you, it's going to cost the state plenty money every 5 years. I am not in favor of that. I would prefer me going to vote. If you want an ID, I can present my passport. I can show you my driver's license. I can show you my social security card. I don't have one now because I'm a retiree. I can show you other IDs. All right? Good. So, and then, everybody who sits, and according to the returning officer, everybody who sits in the polling booth knows everybody. It's not a body from Roseau who is sitting there and not sure. So I can't come and say I'm Lionel Grano. Everybody knows Lionel Grano died how many years ago? So I cannot be Lionel Grano. Everybody knows me. And everybody knows everybody. So that idea about people may vote on other people's name can't work. It's not working. That's not true. This is a farce. Anybody saying that people are looking for a diversion. That can't happen. That's never happened. I'm sure. And she can tell you, if it were then, there would have been reports. Have we received reports over the last, since independence? How old are we now, 45 years? Have we received any reports of people who have voted on other people's name? I doubt. Well, you don't know. Which means to say that once you don't know, then for all those years you don't know, then it's not happening. Right, clearly. That's not happening, Bethan. You don't know about that. All right. So, with regard to financing, financing, in my view, there should not be a limit on the amount of money you can raise. I do not agree that we should have a limit on $5 million. And with regard to strings attached to money, well, in that case, my brother, it's for everybody, you know, because the opposition raised money, the party in government raised money, any party outside there raises money. So are you telling me then when your party raises money, that there are strings attached to it also? Wouldn't that be true to say? That it is not only attached to one person or one particular party, that strings attached would be for all those raising funds during an election time? I would think so. Then let's say, well, strings attached, well, by everyone, to every party. So don't get the notion that strings attached and there's a bigger power controlling us because they give us $2 million and they, well, there may be things that they will want you to consider if you become the government. Naturally, that's obvious. So what's wrong with that? It's up to you. It's up to you to decide how far you go with this. But when it comes to the limit, I am not in agreement with the limit on $5 million. Let us raise as much as we can to run our campaign. So if you cannot raise $2 million, then well, it means that, well, people don't know you. People do not trust you. That's clear enough. All right? I said I didn't have any paper, so I forget some of my points here. Yeah. But just to say, there was another matter here with regard to, I'm trying to tickle my brain, because sometimes it's at the back of my brain here, and then it's my long-term memory then. I'm going to pull it forward, see if it can come in my short-term memory. So then, we talk about, well, I think I talked about dead people voting. I mean, it's not literal when they say dead people voting. Clearly, I mean, the opposition is talking about people using dead people's name. All right, and I think I mentioned earlier on that naturally I couldn't come and vote for my father. So clearly that is not, we mustn't take it literally that dead people walk into the polling stations. All right. I suspect I will forget some of my stuff there. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grano. We appreciate that contribution. Oh yes, we had another hand up. Come on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. With protocol established, I just want to make special mention, welcoming our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mr. Skerrit, our Member of Parliament, Minister Hosea Frederick. And I also want to join in congratulatory message or congratulations to Mrs. Sylvan Burton Green upon your nomination. I believe it is well deserved, and it has been a long time in the making that a Kalinago person reached such a milestone. I just want to say that again. Today we are going for the presidency. Tomorrow we'll go for Prime Minister. So the government, the opposition, I just want to thank you upon the nomination of Mrs. Sylvanie Burton Green. Thank you. Electoral reform. We are on electoral reform, and we all have differing views and differing opinions. And we respect that, and everybody is entitled to their opinion, everybody is entitled to whatever they believe, their beliefs. Before I dive into the meat of the matter, I would like to ask the Honorable AG a very simple question. The Honorable AG, are there or is there any consideration taken or given as to how the new legislation is or are going to affect the Kalinago Act? Knowing that we have an election enshrined within the Kalinago Act, how does the national electoral reform is going to affect our Caribbean? If you want to answer before or... Sorry? Okay, great. Okay. On the issue of campaign financing, you know, sometimes it is appalling as to sometimes what we take to make big issues. I am not here on support of any political party, but as a citizen of the Commonwealth of Dominica, The decisions that we make today or we take today will affect us or will have a bearing on us tomorrow. Campaign financing is, it's logical for any party or political entity who is going to contest an election to raise their funding, raise your finances, raise sufficient financing. And that also goes to speak to the measure. Because if you have, or you are a political party, and you are unable to raise financing to run your campaign, how on earth are you going to raise revenue for the country? How on earth are you going to make the friends, the colleagues, the whatever you may say, to assist you in the development of your country, if you cannot raise a simple campaign financing? Cleansing of the voters list. I am in support of cleansing of the voters list, yes. But what type of cleansing are we speaking about? Are we going to take off the names of the citizens of Dominica because they are abroad, working for a better life, working to develop their family and our country? I mean, is that logical? Like, really? Cleansing people who have passed, yes. I'm in agreement to that. But there are instances where you're going to find names of people who are passed on the voters list. You are definitely going to find moments like that. Because if the cleansing of the list was done 3 months ago, and 2 months into an election, you have 30 people dead, how on earth are you going to cleanse that list? It is going to remain on the list until after election, when the electoral office will do the cleansing. So I mean, that is things for us to understand. On the question of equal access to the state media, of course I am for equal access. And it is never wise to be biased when comes for equal access. The same right that the government has on DBS radio, on GIS, on Kyrie FM, I believe it should be afforded to any other political entity, providing that they would accept it. Because nowadays you find we have that segregation. We have Q95, which favors the opposition, and we have Kyrie FM, which favors the government. Here we have DBS Radio, who's supposed to be a neutral entity, and they're supposed to give equal right to the government and to the opposition, providing that they stick to the stipulated arrangement given by the entities themselves. Fixed term of office. If you have a working government or working prime minister, let's say working prime minister, because I believe that is geared or directed to the leadership of the party. If you have a working prime minister, why on earth would you want him to serve only 2 years? 2 terms. How much does that person is going to achieve in 10 years? We have seen it firsthand in our MPs. Most every 5 years we have a different member of parliament. How much can someone achieve in 5 years? And tomorrow you will say, well, that one didn't do anything. You did not give him the opportunity for him to achieve something. So if you have a working prime minister, I'm not speaking of the Honorable Rufus Skerrit alone. It could be the Honorable Thompson Fountain. It could be any one of them. You have someone who is working for you in the interest of the country, in the interest of the state, yet you want to put limitations to him. So what if you put aside a working prime minister and then you bring a laissez-faire prime minister? What's going to happen? Development of the country is going to be stagnant. It's going to stall. So I believe it is the saying of the people, the right of the people to decide how many years we want to give you as our leader, as our prime minister. Let it be to the people and to no one else. A fixed date for election. We already have a fixed date. And we know that it is every 5 years an election is going to be called. We have never had a situation where it took 6, 7, 8, 10 years before an election is called. Yes, you may have, okay, after the end of the 5 years, you may have probably maybe a month, maybe a week after the election is called. But we have never had that situation where we had tyranny in our country. And last, the voters' identification card. I don't understand why so many of us have to make a fuss of a voter's ID card. I was the holder of a voter's ID card from Antigua and Barbuda. I can speak of voter's ID card. The voter's ID card have my picture and my fingerprint, my date of birth, all my information on it. Now I use this document only once every 5 years. This is a burden to the state. Are we going to put a burden to the state because these cards have an expiration date? And I think it's for about 10 years. A card is valid for about 10 years. So every 10 years, you would have the state finding millions of dollars to replenish voters' ID card. And to me, that is not sustainable. If probably we want an identification card, which probably I'm not really seeing the use for it anyway, because we have our passport, we have SS card, those who have their driver's license. But if we would like to push for a card, let us push for a national ID card, where you have, let us say, for example, you have somebody who just attained 18 years of age. They doesn't have a passport. They are not working, so they cannot access SS card. But upon registration of being a voter in the Commonwealth of Dominica, then such person would attain a national ID card, which they could utilize until probably they make their passport or get a driver's license or their SS card. This is my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I believe you had a question directed at the AG with regard to the impact that the new legislation would have on the Kalinago Act. AG?
Just to say, the answer to the question posed is yes. The proposed draft legislation, the proposed draft Registration of Electors Act, covers the Kalinago Council. In fact, I think the correct formal term is Kalinago Territory Council. At least that's how it is referred to by Sir Dennis. And Section 2, or Clause 2, addresses that both in terms of the definition of election, what election means, to serve as a member in the House of Assembly, constituencies and so forth and so on, including the Kalinago Territory Council. And then when it talks about local government areas, it repeats it includes Kalinago Territory in that. And more directly at clause 3, dealing with the application of the Act, this Act applies to the registration of electors for the election of members of A, the House of Assembly, B, a city, town, urban or village council, and C, the Kalinago Territory Council.
Thank you for that response, AG. So just for the benefit of those listening, the legislation will apply both to general and local government elections. That's very clear. Okay, I think we had a hand up, the gentleman in the purple hat. Are you coming to the front? Yes. Who else would like to speak? We would just like to see the hand so that we can call you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Protocol has already been established. I also want to say welcome to the observers, because I observe most of the speakers never really speak about the observers. So I want to welcome them also. My first point I want to talk about is campaign financing. I believe that every party should raise their own funds to run the election, okay? And no limit. If you want to run election, raise your funds. I want to be simple. I don't want to be talking too long, okay? When it comes to the opportunity to speak or to have access to the media, I'm in support of the national radio station, give permission to each party or independent candidate. But also I want them to pay a fee. You cannot just, you have to pay your finance, you have to pay for your time, not just freeness, okay? And the private radio stations, I don't want to enforce anything on them. Trust me. Because if I be right home, I don't want to force somebody to come and stay at my home, and I don't want them to stay at my home, okay? All right, that's my own home. That is not national, all right? Term limit for Prime Minister, two terms. Some people want to compare with America or president. The Prime Minister is not a president, you know. We have a president and his term, we have term limit for president on a special date. And very soon we'll have a president, Mrs. Button, okay? Right. So, no time limit for Prime Minister on term or thing. You performing, and I heard somebody speak about power. The Prime Minister doesn't have the power, you know. The people that vote for him have the power, okay? So don't talk about power, right? Simple as that. Easy as that. But that's what I want to say for now, because most of the points people speak about is the same way I would say. So I don't want to repeat, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that contribution. But I just want to say there is no issue with repeating, because what we want to do is to hear your views. So your views may reflect the views of other people in the room. It's okay if you say, if you share the same views. Mr. Hill, I believe you had your hand up, and I think there was a young lady to the back who will come after you. Go ahead.
Marika, first let me just take a moment to express sincere thanks to the Prime Minister, the government, all of the persons who were responsible for honoring this distinguished Kalinago servant with the presidency of this country. We are so grateful to you for that honor. My sister, I am so proud of you. So proud of you. Let me just ask the opposition, because I believe there's a process of nomination from the opposition. Let me just make a public asking of the opposition to forgo that nomination and have a sole, one single nomination come to Parliament, and that is Sylvanie Burton, in honor of the struggle of the Kalinago people for this country. Democracy is a funny thing. I was looking at a campaign thing in the US recently, and there is a candidate for president who wants to go back to paper ballots. Forget the electronic stuff. The US has people now saying, we don't want computers because they can hack them and they can do all kinds of stuff, so we want paper ballots. But I think we have paper ballots in Dominica now. So now we want something else. Democracy is a funny thing. It's got all sorts of reasons why people do and ask for things. In Texas, the governor just banned the election commission of Harris County. But in this proposition, we are asking for more autonomy and budgeting for this election commission. Elections are a funny thing. Democracy is a funny thing. What we should not do is to try and use the electoral process to restrict people to the right of voting. What the electoral process should do is make it easy for people to vote, not to make it difficult for people to vote. You know, the US has a policy where I can stay here and vote in any election. I don't even have to go to the US. They'll send me a ballot so I can vote in all elections. Maybe we should look at extending that privilege to Dominicans who are in the diaspora who want to vote. So they don't even have to travel. They can send in their ballot by mail. We have to make voting easy for people, not to make it difficult. You know, I have a story about people voting from the diaspora. The first time that actually entered into my consciousness was when I was in St. Thomas, living in St. Thomas, working in St. Thomas. And the United Workers' Party was in power at the time. The Honorable Edison James was the Prime Minister. And there was a consultation similar to this in a hotel room in St. Thomas. It was the first time that I had ever really registered that government wanted people from the diaspora to come in and vote. I remember very, very clearly, very distinctly, the Prime Minister at the time, Mr. James, and his accompanying person, Earl Williams, making the case to residents of the U.S. Virgin Islands to come back home and vote and participate in the election. What we must not do is to try and use the electoral process to remove a government that we are unable to remove through the electoral process. That is what we must not do. Somebody said, let the people vote. And that is the best and most effective way of electing and removing governments. And that is what the electoral process should support. There is something about the Kalinago issue that I would like to put on the table. We have a sitting chief who is here with us today. Young, brilliant young man. I believe that as part of the electoral process and reform, we should institute a law that makes the chief a sitting member of the sitting government. And here is my justification for this. In a country where the Kalinago people are in the minority, a very significant minority, where we have only one sitting member in parliament, and that's the person who is elected from this constituency. We have 21 constituencies, so there are 20 people from other parts of the country that are sitting in parliament, in the government, and we have one single representative. I think the electoral process would create some equity if we created a position in the government, in parliament, for the seating chief, no matter who the person is, to sit in the sitting government. Not whether the government is black, blue, or blue. Whatever government is in power, that person has a seat in parliament and in the government, so they can represent the Kalinago territory, and that would give us 2 representatives versus 1. So that is a recommendation that I have. On the issue of campaign finance reform, it is true that financing of campaigns can create problems. That happens along the world. So we cannot ignore that. There are countries who have certain rules and regulations. One of them that I am aware of is that they put a limit on how much an individual or a company or an entity can contribute to a campaign, but not on how much the campaign or the government or the party can raise. So to prevent undue clout, because if you have a rich person who can donate $1 million and you have me who can only donate $5, you could argue that this person would have more access to the government and to the people who they are giving this campaign contribution to. So it may be that the government and the opposition might want to consider placing some sort of limit on the amount of money that an individual or a company can actually contribute to a campaign. That is something that would affect everybody. I was thinking about DBS and its role in Dominica. DBS is such a vibrant, vital part of the fabric of this community that I am a little hesitant to make it a political media, because then it opens the door to this hostility of politics entering a national media that has played such a critical and historical role in our development. I am a little fearful that allowing campaigning to go on DBS would lead us into even more divided and polarized communities. So, just in my humble opinion, I would keep all campaigning off the air on DBS and keep it as a media house that continues to unite Dominicans at all levels, so that we have one single entity of unification that we do not contaminate with politics. Not that politics contaminates, but I'm trying to find the right word. But in terms of private radio stations, I don't see how you can tell a private radio station what to charge, who to have on their, as long as the people can pay their money and go on the radio and campaign. I think private radio stations should have anybody who can afford to pay and do their campaigning on their radio stations. But DBS, I think, is something we should consider very, very, very carefully. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, again, for the honor that you have bestowed on this amazing woman. I cannot tell you how this community appreciates that honor, and we are eternally grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this contribution, Mr. Hill. Do we have any further comments? Anyone would like to speak? Okay, we have Mr. Daru, and then we'll take Ms. Sanford. Yes, just 2 more.
Good evening, everybody. And we recognize the presence of our Prime Minister, Mr. Skerrit, Honorable Frederick, and of course, PS, I want to thank you for being here, and I said to myself, I might be the last speaker because we don't want you to leave here after 9 o'clock. I've seen it through those past few days. Kind of interesting. I'm very happy to be standing here, although I'm a little bit scared of the mic now and then. And if I eat some of my words, forgive me. You see, in the Salibia constituency, we have been asking for the same reform. And tonight I was expecting to see some individuals who would come here and share their opinion honestly with us. And I haven't seen them, but such is life. To my Kalinago brave who spoke about this thing of we adopting something from some elite fellas. And I will just speak the language that we understand. Bro, if we are asking for 2 terms, you know why they instituted this 2 terms thing? Really and truly, the Americans thought one day a black man will be leading America, so we can't let him lead us for too long. If we limit him, he will only stay 2 terms and let our white people control us. That is it. Go and do your research. Read. Campaign financing. I promise not to be long. In my humble opinion, you want to run a political party, find your money where you can find it. But interestingly though, while some of these individuals, they are asking for campaign financing and this and that, but let us not forget, how many of us remember the Panama Papers? Those things they do in back door, we must not forget that. And there is still room, or there are still rooms where they can skip and hide and do their things. And pretending to be loyal Dominicans. To me, these people, they are destroying our democracy. So, find your financing, run your politics. Access to state media. The best media we have now is Facebook. Labour Party has a platform on Kyrie FM, UWP has a platform on Q95. What access they want again? DBS is neutral. The thing is that many oppositioners they are scared of is how they are going to pay state media. Really and truly, if they are asking for funds, how they are going to pay it? And Mr. Prime Minister, if they're really asking for campaign financing, we have to be careful how we're going to get it to them. They are always speaking that this level of independent or dependency. So you're going to tell me you're going to sit down for 5 years in opposition, don't give this state a dime, and now you want to dine? No. We have to tell those fellas, check all your sin, my brother, find your money. Good. Cleansing of the voters list. We have to repeat those things because I think they're important. There were individuals in this world, maybe not in this country, but they died for a right to vote. Why do we want to take this right away from the citizens of this country? Well, if some people want it, give it to them. But here in the Salibia constituency, we don't want it. We want every Kalinago person to have a right to vote. And this whole thing of ID card, ID card. We personally have been seeing it from a further angle, which might not be the right forum to speak of it. But if we're talking about card, we may one day want to institute a Kalinago ID card to identify me as a Kalinago. Yes. Because I know in certain states where indigenous peoples are, they have their Indian cards and they travel everywhere with their cards. Mr. Prime Minister, give us a Kalinago Indian card so that I can go wherever I want to go as a Kalinago. Possibly, and these are things that must be given consideration as the first peoples of this country. 2 terms in office. If you're doing well, we stay with you. Anytime you mess around, we say goodbye. Labour Party stayed 20 years in opposition. We never cried and said, oh, because of electoral fraud and this and that, we are not. No, we said 20 years in opposition. When I say we, I'm still young, but in opposition. 20 years, we never cried. The Freedom Party stayed 15 years. We never cried. Workers came, they were 4.5. And because they went out of office, they cannot come back into office, they're crying. This and that. Friends, we are in serious business here. This electoral reform thing is no joke. It's not when you are sitting down on Kyrie FM or Q95 just lambasting and giving false information. a set date for election. But there's a set date for election. What date do we want again? Mr. Eddie, if I'm wrong, correct me. Isn't there a 5-year term with regards to election? And it is up to the Prime Minister at that moment, if he so desires to call election, the Constitution gives him the power. So why jump and dance and say we want a fixed date? Fixed date for what? Okay, let's have a scenario. Election this year will be held on the 28th of September. Now, on the 20th of September will be election. We have a second version of Maria before this date. Let's say on the 18th, what happens? We abandon election? Or, Mr. AG, there is a clause in the Constitution that will say that the Honorable Prime Minister may choose to find a suitable date within a reasonable time to call an election. When are we going to have that reasonable time? After Maria, we stayed 2 years in recovery mode. So it means that we would have extended election for 7 years then. No fixed date for election. There's already one that is prescribed in the Constitution. We stick with it and we rule. Overseas voters, friends, like I said in the beginning, there are people on this planet who died for a right to vote, especially ladies, females. There was a time in history a female could not vote. They could not attend particular activities because of being female. Today, everyone can vote. And I believe in some countries it may still be existing where female has little say, but here in the Caribbean, we vote once we are 18 and we are registered, we vote. Nobody telling me not to vote because I will take somebody to court for that. Once my name is on that list, allow me to vote. And if you're not sure who I am, I will take my oath. And if they want to challenge it after, challenge it. This voters thing, let's be real. Maybe Honorable Vince might be able to help me. Do you remember that one particular year, I think I know, but I will just leave it closed, that there were members who were elected into government. They did not stay in Dominica to serve their constituency. They went abroad. Are you telling me today that these people who are not elected cannot come to, and you who are elected are coming, you running away? No, Mr. Carbon, I think, he left the state. If that is the case, then our so-called friend in Sudan need to stop being in Sudan and come here to serve the opposition. You cannot be telling us something, you cannot be chewing on one side and crying on the other side. No, come back to this state to serve your opposition and let us make things roll. We have to be real. We need to speak to these individuals and make them understand that if you are an elected member, you should serve in your country. You cannot live and go to another country and say you are serving your people. Mr. AG, I'm not going to be long, Capsec. The thing I've been wondering about it. With regards, it might not be part of electoral reform, but where do public servants fit in expressing their during an election? Because it would be interesting that I might be a public servant, but I have a particular philosophy that I believe and I support, and I want to express my views. Why should I be prevented, if that is the case, to express my views? And even within the Kalinago community, as a public servant, I might not be able to serve on the council, which I would love to do, and possibly one day run for chief too. So I'm just thinking of it, and with those few words, I want to say that some of those things that we are in full support of, this ID card thing, identify me and I'm good to go, my passport and stuff, so, and we should have no problem. The only thing I would hope to see is that after everything is done, that we could have a final report and have a little say if there are some things to impact us in the Kalinago community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Darrow, for that contribution. On the matter of public officers, though, that is a matter that would have to be addressed in the Public Service Act. There is a draft Public Service Management Bill, which is currently being reviewed, and all of these matters are to be taken into consideration. Not saying that there is any decision on that yet, but that is a matter for the Public Service Management Bill. So we have Mrs. Sanford, who also wanted to speak. I believe she is the last person that we had.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Frederick, all the members of Parliament, those I have been with, and the new ones. To Kalinago Chief, Kalinago people from this, Atkinson and Trizzel who are listening, the observers listening to us, good evening. I am very pleased to be here tonight. As a Kalinago, born and raised in the Kalinago territory, I must say that electoral reform is a discussion that is very dear to my heart. It's dear to my heart because it represents democracy. And it's just a coincidence that maybe we are standing behind this mural that was created and it says, I think it's Stop Child Abuse. But if we do not have an electoral system that is fair, we are subjected to abuse, and abuse in different ways. And this is what we have to protect ourselves and our community from. So when I stand here to speak tonight, I'm not speaking for myself, because maybe in a few days, a few years, I'll be gone. But I have children, and I want them to be free, and I want them to be in a system where they'll be happy, and they'll be able to exercise their rights. And so tonight, I want to first speak on campaign finance. And I'm hoping that the observers take note that some of the comments that the people are making tonight seem flawed. It tells that the people still need some more education on the proposed bills, because I'm hearing comments like the opposition should raise their own finance and that the government is going to give them money. This is not true. The proposal that Mr. Byron is suggesting is that there's a cap on the amount of finance that is raised by both parties, that both parties should have a limit of $5 million. In the last election, according to the budget and according to his report, he said that the Dominican Labour Party spent $26.6 million on an election campaign. Do you know how much money, how much $26.6 million can do for us Kalinago people? All the struggles that we're going through. So many young people unemployed. So many people coming from studies, unable to work. You're working for minimum wage and under as an NEP worker with your degree. Cannot make $3,000 a month. So they're simply saying there's a cap on this election campaign finance. And we all know it. There's some of us who have seen, and some of us who have been part of this $300 thing in the last election, giving cash to the people in the community. And there's some of us here who know that and who have been part and parcel of that. A cap, $5 million for every political party to spend on an election campaign, which means that the country will be able to watch and account for every money you spend, where the money is going. No more LPOs to pay your bills in excess of X amount. No more offering of 120,000 EC if you stay away from election campaign. We know that. It makes some people uncomfortable. A cap, $5 million. That's simply what they're requesting, and that's what Sir Dennis Byron is asking the state to do. And it's not that the Prime Minister don't want electoral reform. I mean, he stood up in Parliament and he said, no one wants electoral reform more than him. That is why he went ahead and got this man, paid him $500,000 or more to write and compile a report of our electoral system in Dominica. And Mr. Byron is a brilliant man. He was able to look at all the Caribbean countries, look at their laws, and see what is best for our country. And he is proposing some of these important points, such as the campaign finance, because it is necessary for us to have a just and fair electoral process in Dominica. I also agree that we should have equal access to state media. As an opposition member, I know that there are times when the opposition members have been denied access to state media. And if we're talking about justice and fairness, then both parties should be given equal access. Then I'm also hearing about the national ID card. I would endorse a voter's ID card. A voter's ID card will tell you where you have to vote, what polling station you have to go to, your registration number, your name, and your biometrics. If, for any reason, there's a need for a national ID card and, okay, Dominica decides to go ahead with it, then I would suggest on that national ID card that specific election information. If you're using it to vote, you would need to have at least your registration ID and at least your biometric, which would be your fingerprint, because this is one of the key ways that you can be identified. And Mr. Byron didn't just do this report and make this recommendation because he wanted to. It's because he is suggesting that that is the best way forward, having a voter's ID card. And if you have your biometrics and your photo ID on a voter's ID card, I don't see any reason why you will not be able to use it for other purposes. I go to the bank and sometimes I use my passport for an ID. You go to MoneyGram or other organizations and you can use your passport for photo ID, but your passport is specific for traveling. But because it has your photo, people can identify you and your name, they can identify you. But when it comes to election, we're talking about electoral process. And when I hear that word electoral, my mind comes to elections, and elections has specifically to do with voting. So, if for some reason our country wants to give us a national ID card, yes, they can go ahead, but when it comes to voting, to ensure that the process is fair and just, we need a voter's ID card. That is what I would recommend as well. I also agree that we need to clean the list. Because I have copies of the list at home, and there are a list of names that need to be re-registered. So if you are interested in coming to your country to vote for a leader, come back to the country and re-register. Nothing difficult in that. Also for the time frame, whether it's 50 or 90, I think that if our diaspora friends, they want to be part and parcel of this country, nothing wrong in coming once a year to visit your family. That will give you the opportunity to vote. Your pastures are greener, so that means you're making more money, things are nicer for you. You should have the money to come down and vote and visit your friends and your family every once a year. What is so difficult in that? So sometimes we need to really look at everything critically and not just go with what people say, but we need to, I think the territory, Mr. Eji, definitely needs some form of deeper consultation. The people need to understand a little more of the laws and exactly what the report is requesting, because based on what some people are saying, they do not understand what the report is requesting, and they need an opportunity to really go through it. And I think it would be very unfair that after this consultation, further engagement of the community is not done if the people don't understand the report and what Sir Byron is proposing. And to end it, having said all that, I also want to extend my congratulations to our nominee, Mrs. Burton. I'm extremely proud of you as a woman. I think that you will definitely be a light to women in our community.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stanford. The AG would like to respond to a few matters before we wrap up. But just to say that the views that have been expressed here have been very clearly articulated, and I get the feeling that most people here, if not all of you who have spoken, have read and understood the report. Before the AG comes, the Honorable Prime Minister will address us.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me greet my colleagues, the Kalinago chief, and to greet all of you here present from the Kalinago territory. Let me greet also our observers, Justice Masago, who is up very late. I think it must be minutes to 4 in the morning in Kenya, and he's up. We appreciate that. Ms. Glean of the OAS, and of course, Mr. Lee of the OECS. I want to, as I'm on indigenous soil, to take the opportunity to congratulate Mrs. Burton on a nomination for the office of President of Dominica. I think as a student of history myself, it brings me personal joy to see that someone of indigenous heritage could be recognized for the highest office in our country, that of the president. I believe that this recommendation and nomination would have broken down generations of barriers in our country, and also entrenched elitism, which our country has been known for generations. And I have no doubt that she shall represent not only the Kalinago people, but the entire country and all Kalinago people around the world with distinction and great honor. And so I look forward to Parliament on the 12th of September. If we do not have a joint nomination, then it will be 14 days after the 12th, when she'll be elected as President of Dominica. I want to just share some observations with us tonight. I have been to several of these consultations. I only missed a couple because I was out of the country. And I have sat and listened to so many people. And this being the last physical consultation, tomorrow will be a virtual one with the diaspora. I am invoking my profound historical heritage connection to the Kalinago people. I am from Itasi, one of the first settlements of the Kalinago people, so to speak here in the Kalinago territory. A lot has been said in these consultations, and just to say to all of you that within my spirit, within myself, I look forward to the conclusion of the discussions on electoral reform, and we go to Parliament and pass the necessary legislation to give effect to the policies and the legislation that we're talking about, to launch the actual implementation of this process, and to bring to an end, I hope, what have been used as a divisive element within our politics in Dominica. Our country needs to settle down from its restlessness of this, but we must be prepared to understand that there must be compromises in the efforts of discussion. This is why people express themselves and notes are being taken. This is why we're encouraging people to not only speak at these consultations, but also submit in writing your recommendations, your suggestions, so that those can be taken into consideration. Now, there's been recommendation, I have said, the report from Sir Dennis Barron is not my report, it's not the government's report, it's not the Dominican Labour Party's report, it is Sir Dennis Barron writing, these are his views, and we have to determine for us, ourselves, our country, what type of electoral system we would like to fashion for ourselves in Dominica. A lot of people have spoken about ID cards and which form of ID card should be used, whether it's a national ID card, whether it's a voter ID card. We've always held that if we're to spend money, it would be better to use a national ID card so that you could use it for other purposes, because within our region, especially OECS, and the integration process, you can travel with your driver's license. You can travel with a national ID card if you have a national ID card. And so that persons will be able to use that national ID card to travel to St. Lucia, to St. Vincent, to St. Kitts, if they cannot find their passports. But people reference number of countries. I will speak, for example, to the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, the law allows for up to 14 different types of IDs you could use. Anyone. 14 IDs you could use. It says Florida driver's license, Florida ID card, a US passport, a credit or debit card, military ID, student ID, retirement center ID, neighborhood association ID, public assistance ID, veteran health ID, Florida concealed weapons license, government employee ID. And if you do not have any of these IDs, they're saying you may use 2 forms of ID to meet the picture and signature requirement. That is the United States of America. That when we speak about the center of democracy, the leader of democracy, we reference the United States. People talk about the Caribbean. Let's go to St. Lucia. And what obtains in St. Lucia? In St. Lucia, a valid national ID. As a matter of fact, in the last election, you could have even voted with an expired national ID in St. Lucia's election. Check the records. You could use a passport in St. Lucia. You could use a driver's license, a work ID. You could use all of those forms of IDs to go. And if you do not have any of those, you will still be able to vote if they can identify your name on the electors of registration. That's St. Lucia. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, nationally issued ID cards, passports, a driver's license. You could use that in St. Vincent to vote. In Barbados, national ID card or passport. And if you do not have this, the election officers would have all of your details. They will have your ID card numbers and all of those things, and you'll be able to present it, and they verify it, you vote in Barbados. Likewise, in Bahamas, you could use your passport, your national ID card, your driver's license. You could use all of those IDs in the Bahamas, the Consultation of the Bahamas. These are CARICOM and OECS member states. I've given reference to the state of Florida. And so these are the forms of ID. In Guyana, for example, that have had all sorts of issues with elections. A national ID card, but you can still vote if you do not have it on the day of election. Because the process that we engage in ourselves in should not be to seek to disenfranchise people. It should not seek to deter people from getting registered or voting. It should not be used to disenfranchise people. It should be to facilitate engagement in the political process, encourage people to want to get involved in the electoral process to elect a government of their choice. We should not be looking in the dustbin and find out what issues that we can do to prevent people from voting. No, we should see what can we do to enhance people's participation in elections of our Commonwealth of Dominica. What can we do to get our voters, our voter turnout to be 100%, to be 90%, to be 85%? More people to vote in our elections. These are things that we need to consider as we engage ourselves in discussions. Now, there's talk about a virtual constituency. We mustn't just only throw things, especially if we're an officer of the court. We're a lawyer, we're an attorney. When attorneys speak, they must speak to law, they must speak to the Constitution. And if you're making a recommendation, you must also advise the public as to what are the implications of this and how do you go about achieving that objective. And not leave it to the minds of the people, oh, well, a lawyer said it, so it's true. No, we have a duty to explain the law to the people. So, since the constituencies that we have in Dominica must have geographical boundaries, and they must have residents, people must be living there. And Dr. Henderson is saying, well, we must send them to Bird Island. How do you create virtual constituencies? How do they get on the voters list? The people who are going to vote in those virtual constituencies, how do you put them on the voters list to vote? Where do they vote? Are you now going to set up polling stations in everywhere a Dominican is? So there's one Dominican in Japan, that you have a polling station in Japan, or they're going to be sending their ballots in? How are they going to vote? By these virtual constituencies. And how do we have lawyers and judges speaking about virtual constituencies and not talking about the law in respect to it? You shouldn't make me to come and talk about the law for you. And how are candidates selected? How are you going to select candidates? How are they get nominated? How are they going to get nominated when you talk about the virtual constituencies? And what functions will they perform? You must see your PAL rep. Your PAL is going to visit you. You have a drain behind the house that's causing problems. Your road needs fixing. We have to wet the road in Sinico because there's so much dust when it's dry. So, a virtual constituency, you have a voter in New York, and he'll call and tell you that there are a lot of potholes on the streets of Manhattan and you need to fix it for him. This is too serious a matter for us to trivialize the discussions about virtual constituencies. I think that anybody who's suggesting virtual constituencies is really trivializing the engagement that we have in that is so transparent and so important to us in Dominica. The other issue, my friends, is in respect to the issue of campaign financing. I have said, and I said to this in the morning, that from an aspirational standpoint, we need to have a discussion on campaign financing. But when you put in things into law, you also have to preoccupy yourself in the operationalization of the law. In a practical sense, how are you going to deal with it? And some of the things that Sir Dennis Byron has placed in this, he has placed certain, and this is where the Treasury has to come in. Political parties in Dominica are voluntary organizations. Your constituency association, we don't pay anybody to be in this constituency association. As a matter of fact, they have to pay to be part of this process as card-bearing members of the Dominican Labour Party. And so it's a voluntary organization. But the law, as Sir Dennis Byron is recommending, the bill as he's recommending, he's saying that you must have an executive officer. When a political party must have an executive officer. When you have the executive officer, it means, therefore, you have to pay that person. You have to pay that person. When it says that you must have your statements audited, And it's only during election time. Every year, at the end of April, every political party must submit audited financial statements. And so, there's certain impositions it places on political parties will necessitate the Treasury in helping to finance political parties. And if you place a limit on political parties, you will have to consider providing them with some level of support, as is the case in other jurisdictions where you have campaign finance legislation. So, and just to say to you, if we engage you to go and put up posters on the polls, you do so voluntarily. We don't pay people to do that. We now have to monetize that contribution because it's a contribution in kind, and we have to report it. If you hire a bus to take people down, and that bus charges you $500, you now have to get a receipt from that bus driver. And so it places certain onerous responsibilities on the political party that you now have to have staff, paid staff, to ensure that those things are adhered to in law. So we're not opposed to the discussion about campaign financing. We now have to look at the operationalization of it. And furthermore, and I will stand corrected by the Attorney General, the law does not, the political parties do not have a legal personality. The law does not bother itself with political parties. The Constitution makes no reference to political parties. And therefore, if you're going to put the issue, those demands on political parties, you must give political parties a legal personality by possibly enacting a Political Parties Act in Dominica. I am not saying these things to influence anybody's views. I am saying these things to bring certain clarity to the report that Sir Dennis Byron has proffered to us here to discuss. The issue of 90 to 50 days. One of that requirement, to ensure that that requirement is adhered to, Sir Dennis Byron in the legislation and in his document is suggesting that it shall be the responsibility of the Chief of Police to inform the Electoral Commission of Dominicans who come in, when they come in, how long they stay. With guns coming into Dominica, with drugs that we have to fight, and the borders that we have to secure, do you believe that we should provide the Chief of Police with that responsibility to pay attention to Dominicans who come in and to tell the Chief Election Officer, well, Thompson Funkin just came in there and he left tomorrow. So he spent 2 days there, okay, 2 days. Or anybody else, for that matter. That is what the Sir Dennis Byron report is saying. So yes, we can talk about 90, 50 days, but how do you operationalize it? How do you turn it into a practical, implementable approach? Who is going to police it? How are you going to report it? How are you going to verify it? Especially when you can travel with your driver's license and it's not stamped. You can travel with your social security card and it's not stamped. All of these things would need to be taken into consideration as we go along drafting legislation, if we're to go with this, and to make it. But where do we have these kinds of things taking place? So the Chief of Police now is mandated to provide this. The other issue I want to raise with us is the issue of access to national radio. We have no problem with that. But there would have to be rules and regulations, because it is not a situation where you can come and say what you want, how you want. Because the state-owned radio station, its liabilities are placed in the Treasury. DBS self-finances itself. But any issue it confronts, so if DBS takes a loan from a national bank, and it fails to pay it, the Treasury must pay the loan on behalf of DBS Radio. When DBS Radio can't pay its staff, the government must step in to provide it with financing. Thank God they have not been requesting the government except after the hurricane when we get the monies to do so. When the Office of the Prime Minister has an activity and DBS, we ask DBS to carry it, we pay DBS Radio. And so when political parties go on DBS to ensure DBS's financial viability, DBS will have to build the Treasury. And the Treasury will have to pay to DBS the time that all political parties and candidates use on DBS Radio to ensure its financial viability and survivability. So the Treasury will come in there. We're not saying we have issue with this, but what we're saying is that these things have to be computated. We have to add them up. So we have to speak to these things, and not every time we agree, if we agree something and then the government ministers may say something else, we disagree next night. We have to be consistent. And we must not seek to bore holes in the process in an effort to frustrate it. What we have done here in Dominica is unprecedented in the Caribbean. The extent of our consultation. The extent of our consultation. And we have done so with the greatest sense of sincerity and transparency. And to have organizations that we are members of to come and to sit and to listen to the consultations. And so I'm urging us, my dear friends, sincerely in Dominica, to submit our written recommendations. Do so honestly, earnestly, and with Dominica in mind. We cannot keep looking at one person and to see how do we go about removing that one person from government and to say, okay, well, okay, Labour Party had plenty of money. That's what we say. Oh, overseas voters we bring in. Oh, we need voter eyes. Oh, we have to take this person on the list and so forth. Oh, we need term limits. You win elections if the people think that you care about them. And if you show empathy, and if you show concern, and if you do not show these things, then they will deal with you accordingly. But this is what it is. Mr. James at the State House said to the observers that he was leader of the opposition. Then he became Prime Minister. After that, he became leader of the opposition. But this is the system we're using, you know. So it worked for Mr. James. And it's been working for us all those years. We're not saying that at some point in time, we do not need to examine what we're doing, see where we can improve, see where we can enhance efficiency, etc., and to put in policies and legislation in place to make it work. The other point I want to draw to our attention in Dominica is the recommendation from Sir Dennis Byron to expand the membership of the Electoral Commission. You can put 100 people on the Electoral Commission. It will not make any difference to the enhancement of the electoral process in Dominica unless you address the structure of electoral office. And if the state has money to spend, it will be in the interest of the election process in Dominica to bring in an improved administrative and management structure of electoral office rather than expanding the Electoral Commission. And my view is that we need more staff at the Electoral Commission, especially if you're going to deal with this ongoing exercise, especially with the continuous removal of people who die and who need to be removed from the voters list, etc., to answer to complaints of the public, the challenges that people are having to get registered in the various villages, and the unavailability of registration officers to register people. These are the mechanical things that I believe that we need to pay attention to in the process of enhancing the electoral process in Dominica. These are the kind of things that we should be talking about. So we need to look more at the structure of the electoral office and enhancing it to allow it to deliver improved results to the people. Because we're making demands on them, but they don't have the staff that are required. The issue of the Electoral Commission's independence of its budget, and so that's fine. We have no problem with that. Currently, the salaries of the staff and the commission paid to the commissioners are mandated by the Constitution. If we're talking about other things for administrative things, that's fine. Let us do that. This will enhance the rapidity of the actions of the Electoral Commission and the Electoral Office. So let's look at those things. But we have to engage ourselves. We have to bring this to finality. I hear people talking about, let's have another round of consultation. I'm saying we put your suggestions in writing and sign your name by it so we can have it written from you, so we can go back to it and so forth and so forth. And we cannot continue to have this thing in perpetuity. And another election comes and we say, oh, there's no electoral reform. And that's what some people want in Dominica. They want for it to come too close to an election, not have the time to implement the legislation, not have the time to implement the reform, and then they will want to take to the streets and so forth. We have a duty and obligation as decent, honest, patriotic, sincere Dominicans to stand by action on this process, but action that will enhance, not deter people from coming to vote. And the issue of confirmation, the issue of confirmation versus re-registration, there's no way Dominica should support the issue of re-registration. We have no difficulty in the confirmation process and given a time frame within which you can confirm it. There are some who say that the Electoral Commission should go overseas where there are large concentration of Dominicans to get themselves confirmed. There is another school of thought that's saying anybody who wants to confirm, come to Dominica to get confirmed. We have no difficulty in everybody coming to Dominica to get confirmed to be on the voters list. No difficulty with that, if that will advance the process. And just to say to people, we have said publicly, as a party and the government, on the issue of voter ID card against national ID card, we know we were very firm on national ID cards. But our view, if accepting the nomenclature of voter ID card will advance the process, then we support it. All we're saying in this is that should that be limited only on voting day to a voter ID card, or should we not look at best practices, as we like to say in Dominica, and to see what obtains in most jurisdictions in respect to voting on election day? Because you can, in fact, vote on election day without the voter ID card or national ID card, whatever you end up calling it, by having a declaration. So if you can vote on election day by a declaration without having the ID card before you, what is wrong with your passport, your driver's license, your social security card, all of which have an ID? And what we should be looking to do really in Dominica is to synchronize your ID number in Dominica. So your tax number is the same to your driver's license number, and the same with your voter ID number, same with your social security number. And so all of that is synchronized. So that if you become a registered voter, then your voter ID card, or your national ID card, whatever we end up using, would have your number that synchronizes with all other numbers and so forth. So if you miss one, you have one, you can use it. And finally, on the issue of biometrics, there's a recommendation from Senator Byron to use fingerprinting. Now, the people who are here pushing fingerprinting cannot be doing so with any sincerity or honesty with that. This is an attempt to frustrate the process. We have an inspector there outside there. I see him outside there. Inspector of police. If any one of us there were to cause any disturbance in there and he apprehends us, he can ask us for take our fingerprint. He can only ask us for a fingerprint after we've been charged, and he has to process us. And why do we need a fingerprint? Our fingerprint to be able to remain on the voters list in Dominica. Why? Why? We have to, even when police arrest you, you always refuse to want to give it. If you are asked to come and get an ID card, you must fingerprint. When you go for a passport, Mr. Frederick, not you, Mr. Frederick, Elder Frederick. I see you put up your, no, Mr. Frederick. You go for a passport, which is the most important document that we have in Dominica. They don't ask you for a fingerprint. Do they? No. They take a picture and they take your facial biometrics. And all of us have a different facial makeup. Do they say, because they look like me a bit, but I don't know. You know? We all have a different facial biometric. So if it is good enough for a passport, why can't it be good enough for the national ID card or the voter ID card? And so these are some of the things we have to pay attention to. We have to pay attention to the mechanical aspects to this reform, the implementability of those reforms, the practicality of those reforms, because you have to now put it in legislation, in a story writing. It becomes law. And how do you now put it in legal language to stand the test and scrutiny of the courts? Because if you disenfranchise people, there are people who will take to the courts to get the courts to determine what authority the parliament had to deny them of certain rights under the Constitution. These are things that we have to contemplate upon going forward. And just to say to the gentleman who spoke about the Constitution, yes, the Constitution was drafted by British drafters, and Grano is correct by saying that it was debated here. As a matter of fact, when we got the Constitution from the British, from the UK, the first draft did not have a president of Dominica, you know. It had Governor General. And Dr. Honeychurch will tell you, who was part of the constitutional review team, will tell you it is Eugenia Charles, may so rest in peace, who suggested that we should go to and have a president as opposed to Governor General. And she joked with Patrick John and said, well, look, in any event, very soon you will amend the Constitution and do like Forbes Burnham in Guyana and have a president of Dominica. So why not change it now? And so this is why there are certain aspects in respect to the office of president that we need to further clarify, because they're in a rush. So even when we wanted the president to replace Dr. Liverpool, who resigned for health reasons, we had a constitutional challenge to try to overcome. And you recall there was a lot of debate about this, because the number of practical things that it did not take into consideration, because at the time it may have been done in a rush, as Dr. Honeychurch would have told me. So there are a number of changes that were made to the Constitution during the constitutional review. So yes, it was drafted for St. Lucia, for St. Vincent. That is why many of the constitutions have different provisions. So in our case, to have moved to the CCJ, we only require 2/3 majority in the parliament. For St. Vincent to move to the CCJ as its final court, it must have a referendum. Antigua must have a referendum. St. Lucia got an advisement that says to it that the provision in this constitution is similar to that of Dominica. And this is why St. Lucia did not require a referendum to go to the court as its final court. And so there are a number of little differences in the Constitution because different prime ministers and governments at the time, or chief ministers rather, would have imposed their personalities. St. Kitts however has many provisions that we do not have. So in St. Kitts, for example, if you lose an election, as you did former Senator Sanford, in St. Kitts you will not become a senator because you lost an election. So they could, if you lost in St. Kitts as an elected person who ran for election, you will not find yourselves in the St. Kitts Parliament. But in St. Lucia, in Dominica, in St. Vincent, you have that. You have that. But if you lose in St. Kitts, you cannot be considered a minister of the cabinet in St. Kitts under the St. Kitts Constitution and so forth. So it's not that they impose on us. We already had an opportunity to debate it and so forth. But people referencing countries, and St. Kitts, for example, finally, with regards to, because they make reference to St. Kitts a lot. St. Kitts, you can vote with your passport, your driver's license, your social security card, the voter ID card, any one of them that you have, you can present to election officers and you can vote as well, based on advice received from St. Kitts and Nevis. So, the report is there. It's been available to the public from June. It's online on the government website, has been there since then. I got the report within 48 hours. It has been available to the public. And every Dominican who wanted to speak at these consultations was given an opportunity to speak and to say whatever they want and how they want it, in different language, whatever you want to say, you said it. And I think it's been healthy, it's been constructive, and we welcome that debate. My view is that my suggestion to us in Dominica is that we should give consideration to the critical aspects of the reform and advance those. And other things which may require constitutional amendment, let us have another round of consultations, starting with using the Dr. Liverpool report as a base for consultations on constitutional reform in Dominica. But we should not seek to stymie the process, hold back the process of bringing in issues of constitutional reform that will require referendums to cause there to be a delay in the implementation of some fundamental aspects of the discussion we'll be having in Dominica. Voter ID cards or ID cards, whatever you call it. How do you treat the cleansing of the voters list? The confirmation process. How do you treat Dominicans living overseas who are on the voter list? How do you treat those things? Let us deal with those issues and the other issues that I believe that we can have further consultations on and discussions on. But I am saying to us, be careful that we do not delay the process unduly by bringing up issues that we never raised in the consultation with Sir Dennis Byron, and then bring them as new issues in an attempt to hold back the process and so forth. And finally, I want to reiterate that personally, I want the reform, and I want it fast. The government wants it like yesterday, and the Labour Party wanted it in 2016, when we went to the Parliament with the legislation to pass the laws required for electoral reform, to give us enough time before the 2019 general elections, so we could have had all of those things in place. But we know what happened. And just to reiterate our seriousness to this reform agenda, in 2015, August of 2015, we were affected by Erica. 90% of our GDP was affected. 2 villages had to be relocated. And in April of 2016, the cabinet approved close to $3 million and provided the Electoral Commission close to $3 million to start the process of the electoral reform in Dominica. We bought all of the hardware, all of the equipment, all of the software. We trained the staff. We brought in a PRO. That's why we have a PRO at the Electoral Commission. We brought in additional staff. We gave them a bus and other things that they needed to start the process. As a matter of fact, they had even started a pilot by calling in people to present themselves and to give biodata so that we can see how the system was working. That was all started. All we needed then was to give the Electoral Commission the legal authority, as we were advised. And that law, that draft was reviewed by the Commonwealth Secretariat, the legal experts, who told us then that the draft we're bringing to Parliament met international best practices, and they endorsed it, and we should go to Parliament with it. So we sought independent advice. And so it is manifestly unfair and untrue for anybody to say to anybody that we do not want electoral reform. And on the issue of the reference in Sir Dennis Byron's report about Labour Party having $26 million and spent $26 million. First of all, I believe that if Sir Dennis Byron were to put such matter in his document, he should have verified its veracity. And because that was never published by the Labour Party. Nowhere was this published by the Labour Party. And if you put in this in a document, you should have put a proviso in it to state how you got it. Because, and if you quote in any publication, you must have a bibliography giving due recognition to this source. But that source was based purely on rumor, innuendo, political mischief, and so forth. We never spent $26 billion. We never had $26 billion to campaign. We work very hard always in our campaigns. And we try to stay as close to the people all the time so that their eyes can fall on us and their hearts can be directed to put the X by the shoe and elect this Labour Party into government. That's what we do. And so let us disabuse the minds of people who want to peddle this thing about $5 million, about $26 billion and so forth. And so I thank you. I want to let Justice go to bed. It's after 4 in the morning. And my other friend from St. Lucia, and of course our friend from the OAS, to get some rest. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate the technical assistance received from your organizations and the caliber of people which your organizations have sent to us. Tell us of the high regard which you place on this exercise and the organizations place on this exercise. And we will not be able to do it without your guidance, your presence. And I think you have brought a higher level of seriousness to the engagement by your mere presence and involvement in this process. And so we're grateful for this, and we'll be eternally grateful to you for your contributions. And of course, I'm not doing the vote of thanks, but I want to thank the CAPSEC, who's done a fantastic job in moderating these activities over the last few weeks. The AG, who has been at it batting every single night, diligently for this. The support staff, amazing staff. They all work all day long, so they don't go home during the day and sleep at night in the shop. They come from work straight into the field, and we're so grateful for this. The cameramen, the GIS people, the folks who carry this live on Facebook, and George and all his team, and everybody who's been so fantastic, the PSN office of the Prime Minister, and all of you who participated, the police, everybody, fantastic. And I think we need to replicate that in respect to constitutional review. I believe that should be next on our agenda to engage the public on. And let's start with the Liverpool report. And once we go through this process, we'll make this report available again so that people can start reading and put their marginal notes so that we can engage ourselves in that consultation. Thank you. God bless. And again, this is today has been a great day for the Kalinago people, and we're here tonight. I really thought, well, I suspect we have to come back and have a party to celebrate this historic milestone for the Kalinago people. And every one of you, Kalinago people, should be proud. And I feel so privileged and humble to be the leader of the country, overseeing the installation of a Kalinago and a woman as our president in Dominica. And I'm very happy for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister has given his remarks, and he has also given the vote of thanks. So all that is left for me to do is to say thank you much again to everyone for being here, and that tomorrow evening we will have our final virtual consultation. It starts at 7 p.m. The link will be available on the Prime Minister's page, on GIS page, and other social media platforms. So for those of you who are listening, you can join us tomorrow at 7 for the virtual consultation. Thank you very much to everyone for being here, and we do appreciate your presence, the observers as well, and please get home safely. We have some light refreshments as well at the back before you leave. Thank you.